Hello everyone and welcome back. I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I hope that you are with friends and family celebrating, or if you're on your own, that you are safe and happy and enjoying this holiday. It's a holiday, at least here in the United States. I know that if you're in another country or another part of the world, might be a very, very different experience on this day. But I do think that this is a beautiful holiday, and I wanted to share some thoughts with you about it as we move into this holiday. So Thanksgiving, as the name implies, about giving thanks. And another word for this is gratitude, right? Or a very similar idea anyway. So I think those of you who've been around my teaching for a little while know how much I emphasize gratitude. And I want to share with you that it's not just my idea that gratitude is a good idea. Dr. Laurie Santos, I think she's at Stanford University, and she has a class about happiness, and she has a podcast called the Happiness Podcast. And I do recommend you check it out. In that, she shares in one episode about how studies show that doing something like gratitude journaling can actually affect your overall sense of happiness and well-being. So, simple as it sounds, this practice of giving thanks, of gratitude, is something that can impact us inwardly. And for me, this is really what yoga is about. If you want to say yoga is about something else, then maybe I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm not interested in teaching yoga, because that's what I'm interested in sharing with others, is these practices, these things that we can do that impact the human heart and mind. They impact how we feel. They impact our overall sense of wellness and happiness. So, gratitude, at least in this country, once a year we are encouraged to take a day to give thanks. And this can be for anything. A lot of people, I think, assume Thanksgiving is about giving thanks for friends and family, and that is a beautiful thing if you have good friends and family. But it doesn't need to be limited to our relationships or friends and family. It can be gratitude, thanks for a healthy body. It could be gratitude, thanks for a career and a way to make a decent living. It could be gratitude and thanks for having another day on this planet with all its complexity, its mystery, everything that comes with a human life. It really is very, very amazing and incredible to live a human life. So once a year, it's great that in the United States, at least, we take the time to give thanks and acknowledge that. But if you're a student of mine, if you're someone who follows my teaching, then I really encourage you to make every day Thanksgiving, to give thanks each and every day, to take time to do that, because that is a practice. And I don't think it's a particularly difficult practice. I don't think it's one where you have to sacrifice a lot. You don't need to move to an ashram. You don't need to set up a separate space in your house. A journal is not a bad idea, but even that, take any old empty book and you can write your gratitude journal in that. So a yoga teacher that I really admire once said that gratitude is the closest emotion that we experience as human beings to the way that God feels. which I thought was a really interesting concept. I have no proof or evidence of this myself. I have no idea where this teacher was getting this from. I don't know if he simply made it up, or it was his opinion, or this was an insight that came in meditation, or if he read this in one of the Yoga Shastras, or he got it from some other source. So take it for what it is. It's someone's, as far as we know, it's someone's opinion. But I think probably there's truth to it. God, we all conceive of God in different ways, and I don't think any conception of God really touches what that word actually points to. So again, as a human being, I might think or conceive of God as like this old man with a beard who's sitting in the clouds, judging everything. Other people might conceive of God as a female, a woman, the being that gave birth to the universe, and sort of cradles the universe in her bosom, if you will. You know, sort of that goddess energy. Again, as human beings, I think it's hard for us to conceive and really pay homage to the reality of God. But I do believe that that being, that we are all ultimately a extension of, if you will, not really separate from that being, it makes sense that that being feels just gratitude and love for all of creation from which it created from itself. Now, again, if that's not a concept that you can get on board with, if you feel like you're more of a materialist and you follow my teaching just because you find that it maybe helps you with your depression and with feeling better, that's fine. I don't think you need to believe in that teaching. As I said, the science points us to the fact that practicing gratitude will actually make you happier. But it's an interesting idea, I think, that if you were God, or if you were privy to God's feelings, emotions, that you would find just this deep sense of gratitude there. One of the reasons I feel that I'm privy to believe this is that generally the more connected I personally feel that I am to my true nature, to reality, to truth, generally I find the more gratitude that I naturally experience. It isn't something that I need to practice anymore. It is just something that comes forth very, very naturally. So you can say that ultimately this is what we would like. We would like naturally for gratitude to spring forth without effort, without practice, without having to think about it. And I can assure you that this is possible because I've experienced it myself. I've been through it all as a human being. I've been depressed, I've been anxious, I've felt disconnected from source, from being, from God, from love. And that's why I really am confident that if that's how you're feeling, whatever level it is that you might be experiencing, that I can probably help you. I've learned so much about what works and what doesn't work in terms of steering our ship to that place where ultimately that gratitude can shine forth again in a very natural way. But one of the things that we do to get there is to actually practice gratitude. So this is something that you can do at any time, which you know, if you've been following me for a little while, that's what I like. Formal practices are great, and I teach formal practices. I teach at yoga studios, I teach professionally, I teach online, I teach retreats and workshops, and I teach all kinds of techniques, and techniques are great. But you can't do yoga poses all day long. At most, a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours if you really have a lot of extra time and energy. So you have 24 hours in a day, and you're limited to 1, 2, 3 hours of practice if asana is your main practice. What about meditation? Well, a lot of people I know who meditate, they can get in maybe 20, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but that can be really a stretch for them. It can be very challenging, very difficult. What about pranayams? Same thing. I don't know many people who do pranayams for an hour. It's possible, or longer. Bandha work, inquiry. All of these things tend to be things that we can only do for a limited amount of time. We can't extend them out indefinitely. But gratitude is something that in any moment you can practice it. Right now, you can practice it. So right now, let's take this moment as an example. You're listening to this video. Well, if you're watching this video, then you're watching it on some kind of a device, a computer, a phone. Now, maybe you're watching on a friend's phone or computer, but chances are you're watching on your own. And when I was growing up, these devices didn't exist. Nothing even close to them existed when I was very young. Personal computers weren't a thing. And then even when the personal computer became a thing, there was no internet. Even when the internet became a thing, internet video was not a thing. So the fact that I can reach you today on Thanksgiving so easily and freely with this video, that's a miracle. That's amazing. That is something to give thanks for. But most of us will simply take it for granted. You'll be like, well, it's just YouTube. It's social media. Everyone does that. That's no big deal. But therein is the problem. The human mind is wired in such a way that it tends to take amazing things for granted. The fact that I can take this next breath is a miracle. And maybe the reason I am especially sensitive to that is the fact that I'm an asthmatic. So I've actually had times in my life when I've not been able to take a deep breath in and out. It was a struggle. It was difficult. It was labored. And when you're having that experience, I don't wish that on anybody, but in another sense, it can teach us a lot. Because when you're finding it difficult to even breathe, then you can be so grateful for when you can breathe freely, right? Because it's no longer a given. It was something that was taken away from you. So the next time you're able to breathe freely, you're like, wow, I'm just so grateful that I can. So breath, this is another thing that we can be grateful for, the technology that allows us to share this. If it's Thanksgiving Day and you're watching this, you're probably watching in a house, a home. Maybe your own, maybe you're at a loved one's with your family, staying over. So that's something to be grateful for, right? People who love you, who you love, who you can share this time with, even if you don't get along completely. Just having people who welcome you into their home and are willing to share that with you, that's something to be grateful for. You know, I could go on and on and on. The point is that gratitude is something, it's a practice that you can do always. It's not complicated, right? We all understand it. Now, I want to be clear about practice versus when a practice starts to take on its own life and its own energy. So you might try this, practice gratitude. Maybe again, if you've really never done it before, I recommend actually journaling. So maybe taking some time every evening before bed. It could be in the morning, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that you do it. Take a little bit of time to write down what you can be grateful for that day. And again, if you're having a rough day, you may feel like, well, there's nothing to be grateful for. But I think I just gave you some examples that will show that that's not true. Chances are you've got a roof over your head, you have food in the fridge, you have money in the bank, and you have relatively good health if you're watching this, okay? Now again, I know one of those things may be missing, or more of those things may be missing, but you can then find gratitude for the other things. Now, if you're someone who is maybe suffering from a terminal illness, you might think, well, I have nothing to be grateful for because I'm going to die of cancer in 3 weeks, whatever it might be. That's not really an excuse for not feeling and experiencing gratitude from the perspective of this teaching, because the teaching that I'm sharing with you that comes from non-duality, from Zen, from the Tantric yogic tradition, this teaching emphasizes present moment. What is happening in the present moment? And while a doctor can give us a diagnosis that we're going to die in 3 weeks, and our mind might constantly try and remind us that we're going to die in 3 weeks, the fact of the matter is we're alive today. And I don't know what the state of your condition is today, but I'm sure that if you think about it for a moment, you will find things that you can be grateful for today, in this very moment. And that is the key. When we get into future and past, our mind can come up with all kinds of ideas about why we aren't grateful, or we can't be grateful, or we shouldn't be grateful. But this teaching isn't really meant to be for the future, the past. We can't change the past. We can't predict or control the future. So all we can do is really focus on the now. And I think anybody in any moment can find something that they're grateful for in this moment. Again, it might be a challenge, but that is the practice. So, after practicing gratitude for a little while, what can start to happen, like with any other practice, is sometimes that momentum that we build begins to take on a life of its own. And these days, what I tend to experience is spontaneous gratitude. I'll be in my home, which is very humble. It's an apartment. I don't own a home. Can't afford to buy one. So I live in a very humble apartment. Even apartments in the area that I live in are quite expensive. So this is a little bit of a rundown place that I live. But even though that's the case, I still feel gratitude. And because I've been doing this for a long time, that gratitude is spontaneous. I don't have to sit there and be like, geez, what should I be grateful for? Rather, I just am in my house and the heat kicks on when it's cold and I'm just welled up. I feel so full with gratitude for the fact that that is happening. So that's the end result of doing this for a long period of time, that at a certain point things flip over. And in the Zen tradition, this is sometimes referred to as riding the bull home. There's a very famous Zen teaching called the 10 Bulls. And in the 10 Bulls, it's 10 frames, and it basically talks about enlightenment, the process of enlightenment. And in one of the frames, the spiritual seeker is looking for the bull. The bull is the true mind, the mind of enlightenment, our true nature. And he sets off looking for this bull and eventually finds it. And at first he's guiding the bull back home, right? He lost the bull, now he's guiding the bull back home. But at a certain point, he's actually riding the bull back home. So these practices, these things that we're chasing gratitude at first. And then at a certain point, gratitude starts to just arise naturally. There's a wonderful quote. I'm not sure who it's from. It might be St. Francis of Assisi, but there's this wonderful quote that at first you chase God, and then eventually God chases you. And again, I think that's so great because this is something we can actually experience. So again, there are many spiritual practices, and some of them are more practical than others. Some of them we are naturally drawn to more than others. But I think gratitude is one of the most beautiful, simple, and easiest spiritual practices to implement in your life. Again, moment by moment, in this very moment that I'm talking to you right now, you can practice gratitude. The minute you get up from watching this video, you can practice gratitude. Every morning when I make my tea, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude, that I'm amazed that this tea comes to me all the way from China or from India, and I'm able to purchase it and have it sent to my home, and I'm able to enjoy it there. And I've got hot water, I've got clean water. Again, it's just so much to be grateful for. Now, I'll share with you a personal note that I'm in the middle of some heartbreak. I really have some personal sadness going on. And I share this with you not for sympathy, but to drive home the point that these practices and the gratitude transcend the ups and downs of our experience. And this is my experience, again, more and more. I think when we have strong ego identity and we are really confused about our true nature, any kind of upset just topples the whole apple cart. And maybe we were grateful, and then someone breaks our heart, and then we're just bitter and upset or sad or depressed. But my experience is the longer I do these practices and I live with them, the more those become separate. I can experience heartbreak and sadness and grieve simultaneously with experiencing joy and gratitude for being alive, for this beautiful weather that we're having in the Atlanta area right now, and so many other things. So a common question that my inquiry teacher gets from people is, how long do I have to do this work? When am I going to be done? He has many people who follow him because they have chronic pain, or they have trauma, unhealed trauma and repressed emotions that they're trying to heal from and deal with. So they can have a sort of seeking energy, in that if you're in constant pain, you obviously want that to go away. So you often are looking for an answer, and that can result in this sort of mindset of like, okay, I'm doing the work, so when am I going to be done with this? When am I going to be free of pain? When can I stop? And my own sense and experience with this is, I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. Really, these practices, whether it's this one, gratitude, or inquiry, which is another practice that you can learn to live with, these practices, it's not that we finish doing them. It's that they become integrated into who and what we are. And they start to occur spontaneously in the moment. So as confusion, as suffering, as any other experience that pulls us out of truth arises, it is met by these practices, and in essence it is neutralized by them. So it's not that we finish doing inquiry and we're done and we're healed, or we finish gratitude, right? Or we finish with meditation. Rather, these become who and what we are. These are processes that replace the processes of the ego. And anytime the ego processes arise, if they should arise, then they are met with these tools. So again, if gratitude is not something that you feel arises for you spontaneously, okay? That's how you know you've done enough of it, is you've set the wheel in motion and you're riding the bull home, right? You no longer have to practice gratitude. Gratitude is just, it comes up on its own, right? So if you're not there yet, then I would recommend this practice to you. And today, Thanksgiving, what a great time to get started on that practice. Of course, there are other practices, and I'll talk about these as I have in the past. But this is one that I think, again, is probably one of the simplest. Everyone knows what gratitude is, and I think everyone can find gratitude. It's just taking the time to do it. So it could be while you're at a stoplight. It could be like me when you're making a cup of tea. It could be before bed at night, when you wake in the morning, at the beginning or end of your meditation. So many opportunities to practice gratitude. Hello everyone. So unfortunately, that footage the closing footage I shot for that video out on my walk somehow got deleted. So I basically said what I wanted to say about the subject. Again, gratitude, easy to practice, just get in the habit of it, and hopefully eventually you will experience what I'm talking about, where that gratitude begins to happen spontaneously. And again, you may have to work quite hard at this at first, but think of all the spiritual practices that you can do. This has got to be one of the easiest ones, and again, one of the most practical ones that you can do at any time. So as always, I want to thank you for listening. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, whatever it is that you're choosing to do. And I'm very grateful to you. So namaste and have a beautiful day.